Welcome to the Interior Designer Podcast, real-world business education for interior designers. In today's episode of the Interior Designer Podcast, we're speaking with Hannah Bowyer, founder of Hannah Bowyer and Company, about transforming your interior design business through strategic systems implementation. Far too many interior designers rely on their giant interior design brains to juggle the bazillion details involved in every one of their interior design projects. While this is 100% impressive, it's not a great way to run a business. During our chat, Hannah explains that while this approach may be manageable today, ultimately it prevents business growth tomorrow. Hannah shares her framework for transforming mental checklists into automated systems that respond to clients even when you're unavailable. If you're looking to take your interior design business to the next level, you're going to love my interview with Hannah Bowyer. So let's get to it.
Hannah, before we dive into all my million and one questions, can you give me an idea of how you got into the business you're doing, how you became Hannah Bowyer?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a funny start. I'd always been in the service industry and had acquired some, I guess, transferable skills. And I'd become a new mom and decided I wanted to branch out into the world of virtual assistants. And at the time, I was just picking up odds and end jobs. Particularly, I was working for a financial blogger, and I basically was just editing her copy, and it was brutal work. I didn't know what I was reading. And at the same time, I was kind of curating my home. We were pretty newly married, and I really loved being a part of the interior design world. But I knew that with my husband's work, I wasn't going to be able to be somewhere that I could really establish roots as an interior designer. And so that led to the question, I wonder if interior designers use virtual assistants. And that was in the year 2019. So when I was searching on Google, I couldn't find anyone who was a virtual assistant for interior designers except for one. And I'll name her because I credit all of it to her. Her name is Brittany Elms with Mind Design Assistant. And I went to her and I said, hey, can I work for you? She said, sorry, no, I'm not hiring. I'm like, okay. So then I started listening to podcasts. I started searching just anything I could to figure out what designers needed, and started teaching myself Chief Architect. And I already had skills in Canva, so I was able to kind of utilize that as well. And then like 6 months or so go by, maybe have a client or two. Brittany reaches back out to me and says, hey, would you like to work for me? I'll teach you and I'll pay you. And I was like, yes. So I worked under her for at least 6 months. Got that was my major, push forward. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back out on my own again. And she was super gracious, and that was what kicked off my business. And so, I mean, that was 2020. And as you know, like everyone went virtual anyways. And so that just really like took my business to the next level.
Okay. So where is it today? Because I know you've maybe not rebranded is the right word, but the business looks different. Your online persona looks different now.
Yeah. Well, I was using Dubsado for my own business to manage the back end. And I had a client reach out to me and say, do you think that Dubsado would work for interior designers? And I was like, yeah, I don't know why not. And I went and looked for anything I could find again on Google for Dubsado and interior designers, and there was nothing. You could find Dubsado for photographers or wedding planners, but like that wasn't a thing for interior designers. So I feel like I kind of pioneered that in a way. And so I did it with the one client, and then it kind of just took off from there, and I was able to create a repeatable process for that. And yeah, it just keeps growing. And as people have begun to understand what Dubsado can do for them, it just has really become like our A area, our expertise, and what we're known for.
Mm-hmm. Um, is I mean, I've never used Dubsado, so maybe give us an idea of what you're saying, what it can do for a designer. And let's look at it from 2 points of view. A designer who maybe isn't using any kind of software, like organized software like that. Let's start with that. Someone who isn't, like, kind of is doing things with like a little bit of Google this or a little bit of something else. What would
Yeah.
that transition be like for them?
Yeah. Well, for most of my designers are coming that way, I would say, where they have a lot of their questionnaires in a Google form. They are scheduling their calls back and forth via email. Maybe they're sending a DocuSign, or maybe they're having their documents signed in person. Those kinds of things are things that can be taken care of by Dubsado. And so for a designer who's just starting, uh, understanding the pieces that feel clunky and messy or like not professional, those those things are the things that are like, okay, yeah, I can elevate that. I can improve on that. Dubsado could potentially be the next step um, for that designer.
Okay. Let's say that same designer had heard from a friend that Dubsado would be fantastic piece of software to use for their business, and they said, I've been working with it for a couple of years. I can show you a couple of things." As opposed to working with, because I'm assuming you've worked with this for long enough now that you probably know all the tricks and things like that. Like
Hmm.
back in the day, I had a friend who was like the Excel guru, and
Not
they
me.
had, right, but they had all these weird little shortcuts. And they're like, "Why are you doing it this way, you dummy?" And then they'd click two buttons, and all this stuff would happen. You're like, "What?" So I assume your level of expertise with Dubsado, or somebody who's been working with it for numerous years, it's probably like light years different than if I started playing with it. After say 3 months, I'm probably still making so many mistakes. So
Yeah.
what are the cool stuff that you would do that I would screw up probably?
Hmm. Cool things. Well, one of the main features of Dubsado that I love to use when it makes sense in a designer's process is the ability to have the client see the first proposal, like the design proposal, then scroll through it, click yes, I agree to that, and then they're shown the contract. They sign that, and then they're shown the invoice and they pay. And it's all very cohesive experience for the client. All they had to do was click on one button in the email and they're taken through that entire thing. So that's something that maybe not every designer would know right off the bat that Dubsado can do, but if you connect those three things together, it's a very smooth process. Um, the other thing is presentation feedback. So I see a lot of clients, yes, they do in-person presentations, but some send them online via email, and then they're maybe getting information back in the email as well. And so it just gets so convoluted. And so we have created these forms in Dubsado that allows you to put the presentation in that form. They can view it, and then they can answer prompted questions or rate or choose whatever options you have in there, right? So again, it's an elevated experience that maybe a designer wouldn't know to create.
Yeah. Which makes it, to me, it makes complete sense, right? The whole concept of interior design is you're providing an experience and an end product to the homeowner that they want but they can't do, right?
Mhm.
And if the designer in their business is clunking along with Gmail and spreadsheets and all this stuff. It's like, well, we could be doing it a better way, and here's a better way. Why would you not want to do that? It
Yeah.
boggles my mind that happens.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is that designers are crazy busy, right? And they're just going along in their day to day, and they're just keeping their heads above water. And to shake the boat, rock the boat, it creates a lot of unease. And so I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I see that. I mean, this is like the number one reason why I wanted to get you on the podcast is so and when I looked into Dubsado and I saw, okay, obviously it does all these things and that's fantastic, but it's who's going to hold my hand when I'm that busy and I'm, fighting fires all day? Who's going to make that transition easy?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving slightly aside from Dubsado into like systems and process more in a general point of view. The designers that I speak with are mostly solo or very small team, like 2 employees. And the principal designer generally is keeping all of the balls in the air and all of the processes and all of the steps up here in their
Yeah.
brains.
Yeah.
And in a past life, I ran 2 different fitness businesses and sold them both right before COVID hit. And the only reason I could sell them was because I had basically made myself irrelevant to the day to day. You didn't need me anymore. And my wife's an interior designer, and during COVID, I listened to all of her phone calls with clients and all of the details that she had to keep in her mind all day long. And I'm like, this is crazy pants. You can't do this.
Yes.
They've got to get it out of their brains. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming you've got stories of designers who've come to you where this kind of automation and this kind of systems has improved their business. But what I'm curious about is some of the bad things that you've heard stories of, like mistakes that have happened when they didn't have properly codified systems, some of the bad stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like designers are probably intimately aware of the bad stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's so many of them hold it in their heads. I think about the procurement process and all the details that go into that. And it astounds me still to this day that there are designers that keep so much of that in their head. And when you're dealing with those kinds of details, I mean, I don't know, something happens at home and your kids are sick, or God forbid you're in the hospital, like those kinds of things, like where is that information going to be found for your team? And so I don't know if I have a specific story, but there's just so many opportunities for things to go awry. Um, and then it compounds when those things that maybe were on the back end then become the front end, and your clients become aware of them, and you have upset clients, or maybe money was accidentally mismanaged, who knows? Those details, if they had been in a process or even just written down somewhere, uh, would have avoided probably a lot of that headache.
Agreed. Okay. Well, let's go the other way then. Let's say
Okay.
you've now been working with one of these designers whose previous way of doing business was keeping all the steps in their head, and now they've started working with you. And maybe it's 6 months down the road, maybe it's longer, maybe it's shorter. I'd love to know some success stories, things that have, like, how you've changed or you've helped them change their business, because you guys work together. It's not you doing it. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. I would say first and foremost, I see the time back that they receive from implementing systems and processes. And specifically, if we're talking Dubsado, when they kind of take themselves out of the onboarding process, not entirely, but all that just like back and forth, gotta send this email. I need to make sure I send them a reminder email. Oh, I need to make sure I ask them this question before I get on the call. Like those kinds of things are pre-thought about and created in Dubsado so that they could go be at their daughter's basketball game and get a lead, and that lead already has the information in their inbox, and maybe has already scheduled their discovery call. Like that to me is the biggest perk, I guess, of having something like Dubsado, is to be able to be more present in your life and in your business and have that freedom. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other things. Well, so client experience, like designers will often say to me, I know that my designs are 10 out of 10, but my experience makes it look like it's a completely different design firm. And they feel like they are short selling themselves, that they're not getting the clients that they deserve because their process, their experience to signing up with them doesn't reflect the quality of their projects. And so if they can create continuity between those two things, it makes them feel more secure, more professional as they show up for the client. But then the client also can see the value that the client brings or the designer brings before they ever begin to design.
Yeah. And I mean, I've always thought interior design is a pretty unique business in that it
Yeah.
sells a super luxury service at whatever price point, right? If
Mhm.
you do like really high end stuff, you're dealing with really affluent people. But even for normal people who've got a small home and they want to put in a new kitchen, right?
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It's a big expense, right? I mean,
Yes.
after the home itself, it's probably the next thing that you're going to have. It's more expensive than a car, right?
Mhm.
And yet you've got on the residential side, the vast majority of design firms are micro-sized, run by a principal who has almost zero formal business education. And it's
Mhm.
just what they've learned along the way. We all make mistakes. I mean, when I ran my business, I didn't have a formal business education. I made tons of mistakes, but
Yeah.
I had to bring somebody on as we grew to teach me the things I didn't know. And ever since then, I've been a huge fan of like paying for knowledge when you can afford it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Um, I'm wondering if you find you get pushback, maybe, or not, pushback's not the right word, but when you have inquiries, people who maybe want to work with you, I'm sure price is always a major consideration. How do you
Mhm.
kind of sell yourself that it's going to cost X, but once we get you, situated properly, my fee is going to be more than paid for in what we're going to be able to do and how your business is going to run. You're going to have happier clients. There'll be more referrals, like all of that kind of stuff. I assume that's probably a big
All those
concern.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I would start with even just the initial setup return on those costs. For us, it takes us anywhere between 20 to 25 hours to get Dubsado set up. And that's with all of our knowledge. And so I think it's very easy to say that it would take someone who's new to Dubsado at least double those hours, right? Because you don't know how to use the platform yet. You're learning and you might be making mistakes. So that right there is a lot of saved time. But then once it's implemented, the saved time that you get back to put into um, going to the I don't know, wherever you're going to spec your tiles or your marble or like, all the different things that are on site and you have to be there for while your business is still, at least your onboarding process is kind of working in the background. Like that's something that means that you don't have to do when you get home or on the weekend. So more than anything, it's just the added time and freedom back in your business. But yes, you also mentioned like the caliber of clients and the what's the word I'm looking for? Not the turnover, but like the sorry, I'm floundering. What's the word?
Sorry.
The closing rate on your clients, right? Like if your experience is matching the caliber of your designs and they see your value, then it's more likely that they're going to say yes, as opposed to them getting the Google form and the delayed
Right.
emails back and forth, right? Like you're going
Yeah.
to close more clients because you look more professional.
Right. And yeah, like you were saying earlier about the designer who thought their designs are a 10 out of 10, but the client experience, the how the business works is not presenting at a 10 out of 10.
Yeah. And
And
if I was just going to say, there's so many designers, right? Like, you need to stand out too in your area. Like
yeah,
that could be the difference between you getting it or not. Like if they're not getting a fast response, if they're not getting a more professional response than what they expected, especially if like we're talking about a luxury service like interior design. If they're, checking out a few different people, like that could make or break who they go with.
right. And it's going to be a comparison because
Hmm.
very few homeowners are going to approach one designer out of the blue and say, I want you to do my home. No, they're
Yeah.
going to approach 3, 4, 5 designers and
Yep.
they're going to ask the same thing of them and they're going to get a different response, right? So if
Yep.
my response is a Google form and your response is this very organized and quick and beautiful response and professional
Hmm.
looking response,
Hmm.
well, that sets a tone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and we all make snap judgments, right? And maybe that's the snap judgment. They say, okay, Google form, you're out. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. And it's just,
Right?
it's not even something that they, yeah, are consciously deciding, but that 5 seconds could change it.
For sure. Um, okay, I'm hoping that you can take me through an example of maybe onboarding, because you've mentioned that a couple of times.
Yeah.
So what would that be like? So you've now started working with me and you're spending that 25 hours setting up my Dubsado. That's the whole thing. But can we dive in on maybe that one process, how that would work?
Yeah, sure. We would start by asking you to write anything down that comes to mind about your current process. Um, I just want it on paper. It doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be organized, nothing like that. Um, and we get on a Zoom call together and I begin to create a visual map of that process. And we start with questions like, where do your leads come from? Are they coming from Instagram? Are they coming from a website, referral? We need to know how to capture those leads and get them into Dubsado. And I think initially, right off the bat, designers are going to say, they come in from so many different ways, and I just get so bogged down and overwhelmed because I might get information from one client here, but then I didn't get the information from this referral here because we kind of like jumped past some of these steps. And then later down the line, they realize they don't have all the information that was needed to really begin the project. And so right off the bat, I want to kind of bring it back and find a way that we can funnel all those different leads into one form so that no matter where they come from, we say, okay, thanks so much for reaching out. I need you to fill out this form for me so I can get all your information. And that begins to kick off the client journey through the onboarding stage to welcoming them into the design firm family. So we start there, and then quickly it becomes very nuanced because some designers say, oh, I don't want anyone to book a call before I first have fielded their initial questionnaire. And so, okay, so then, they receive the questionnaire, Dubsado pauses to accommodate for that. And then the designer might say, okay, yeah, I'm ready to go ahead and book. And then the question is, where does the investment guide come in? Some designers want investment guides to be the first thing that goes out to a potential client as a potential way to further weed out that person. Maybe they see the investment costs and they're like, nope. Great. I mean, that you don't want to work with that person anyway. So like that's part of my job is to figure out how wide you want to cast your net or how narrow you want to cast your net and figure out how you're going to vet those people along the way. So we determine when that investment guide is going out. Then again, part of creating the process is understanding when do you want to take discovery calls. Maybe you say, I want to do it anytime they want to book with me. Or as I would recommend, you choose days and times that you know you're available, and that helps streamline your processes. It also helps free up brain space to know, okay, these are my working days. These are the days that I'm more, front facing, what have you. And so then tell me if this is getting too nitty gritty or if it's like way over the head.
Details.
Okay.
Love all the details.
I'm just thinking through the process mapping flow, and again, it's all so specific to the designer that I really want to understand how they're operating the business currently and also how they want to operate the business. So there's just kind of this middle ground we have to find because not always can we jump to the final end products. There might be some things that we have to slowly change. And so I'm trying to think of an example of that, but designers might have a way they are always doing things, and then we implement Dubsado, and the way they think about their processes and how they show up has to change. And so we have to kind of like break that down into more bite-sized pieces. Let's see.
I 100% get that. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's like, when you're implementing this, there's a psychological kind of point to this is we could be doing processes the wrong way, but that's the way we've done them.
Yeah.
And to change them is going to cause pain like anything else. You want to get better at something. It's January, everybody's got New Year's resolutions, they want to lose 20 pounds, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be painful before it's not painful.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, and design firms are all going to be different in different ways and led by different people with different ways of doing things, right? So I can see it being complicated. You've got your plan of what you would like a client to do,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to get pushback or fear or all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What I was trying to get you to do with all this detail stuff is paint a picture for the designer that's watching this right now. And they're thinking, I know I need to do this, and my business isn't where I want it to be. And I was pretty sure after reading your stuff and seeing previous podcasts that you were the person I wanted to talk to about this, in terms of like humanizing this transition, right?
Yeah,
Because it's a business, but it's a personal business, right?
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, yeah, the process is very intimate, and I'm constantly, trying to dig a little bit deeper in their head, try to understand what their fears are, what's motivating them, whether it be fear-based or not. Um, and ultimately, I'm trying to get to how do they want to show up, and like as if they were to show up as their most ideal business self, what would that look like if they were to run their client experience that way? And what do their clients need to know? When do they need to know it? Um, what questions are being asked later down the line that should have been answered earlier on and not at install, when they're like, "What? I can't be here for install," or "What? You want me to do photography?" Like, those kind of things are things that need to be documented somewhere and have been repeated over and over and over again. Um, so yeah, it's very nitty-gritty. What other questions do you have?
Um, I on other podcasts, I don't know. It's a topic that systems and processes that comes up. It comes up frequently on a lot of interior design business podcasts,
Yeah.
and I I love it. I'm a process nerd, and I love podcasts. I get frustrated to no end when I hear somebody talk about they're the expert on, or presenting themselves as the expert, and there's never any discussion of these first steps of making the jump from pulling the processes out of my head to actually writing them down. And I liked how you described it, how you kept asking questions. Well, how do you do this? Well, how do you do this? And then you help them bring that together, because it's one thing to say you need them in your business, right?
Right.
I'm like, yes, I get that. I need it in my business. I get that. How
Yeah.
do I do this? I have not been to business school. I do not know how to do this. Somebody take my hand, lead me along, and let's get it together. And to be fair, there are some business coaches that I've spoken with who they are able to do that, and they're able to describe that. And I think that's such a huge thing, right? That
Yeah.
to make it feel easier, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not rocket science, but if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like so many designers get hung up on the thought that every project is different, and therefore their process must have to look different to match each of these clients. And so they're reinventing the wheel every time. Um, and I love it when the light bulb comes on for them and they realize, like, oh, all of these processes, for all these clients fit into the same process. Like, yeah, it might deviate a little bit. I might have to edit a little bit more here or add a little bit more here, but like, I still have to do step A, B, and C to get them to the end. And so, yeah, I love getting in their heads and figuring out those different pieces. And when that light bulb comes on for them, it's really cool.
And it's the exact same story for designers and their clients, right?
Yeah.
Like designing a kitchen, um, they're all going to be different, right?
Mhm.
There's going to be parts of it that are going to make it unique to that family. But for the most part, there are rules to how a designer designs a kitchen. You don't just throw everything and do this crazy stuff. And it's like, no, we don't do it that way. We do it this way, but then we'll make it special for you by doing this and this and this. And then it's going to be custom and it's going to be perfect. Right. So
Mhm.
why would their processes to deal with those clients not follow that same sort of pattern? You have a system that's set and then you tweak it here and there
Yeah.
where you need to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
No, go ahead, please.
oh, I was just gonna say, trying to decipher where those hard points are that you're not going to budge on. Like, even I'm not going to take text messages. I'm going to communicate everything to you via email. Like, that's going to show up in their process when um, they need to get a reminder email, or they want further feedback or communication on a presentation. Like, those things, if it's already been established in the process and it's been communicated over time, then that's a hard line. No, I'm not going to deviate from this. I'm respecting my time. I'm respecting your time as the client. And it just makes things so simpler, and it saves so much extra brain space because you don't have to consider changing something. You just know how you're doing it, and that's not the way it was or way it is.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Without mentioning names, would you be able to share some success stories of your clients, like how their businesses have changed?
Hmm. Yeah. So there are a few that I've gotten to listen to on podcasts. So I get to hear like third party how they're describing their business after I've worked with them.
That's
Um,
cool.
it's really cool.
That
And
is cool.
they talked about how they're they are showing up in a way that is more confident and more aligned with who they are, um, because they know that the service that they're bringing to their clients is 10 out of 10, that their experience is a 10 out of 10, and that their choices within their business is aligned with their priorities. Um, so they've chosen that they want to have more time with their kids, and so they've been able to create that freedom by implementing these systems and processes. Uh, so I mean, that ultimately is what I'm all about, and I love to hear. And I'm trying to think of another one. I was working with a stager, which is different than interior designers, but kind of similar, right? Um, and again, it was just like his day to day was so much simpler because he knew what the program was going to do for him. He knew what he had to do on the back end, and he could just show up as more fully present. Um, and yeah, I love that.
That's amazing. No, that's
Mhm.
amazing. Um, I wanted to ask you about uh, one, the future of your company, where you think you're going and growing, the future of Dubsado, and both of these things are going to be tied into artificial intelligence. Uh, Probably to the first thing we'll probably see is programs like Dubsado integrating AI into itself, right?
Yeah,
Salesforce, right? Big, massive Salesforce,
yeah,
they're full on into AI. And as much as we all play with image generators and or using chat gpt or whatever to ask questions, odds are the first things that are really going to impact our lives are going to be pieces of existing software we use that are going to integrate AI. I mean, for example, when I opened up this to record this, now Google Gemini is now taking a transcription, I
Yeah,
recorded something 2 days ago and it wasn't doing that. So it automatically transcribes it now. I
it's
didn't
amazing.
ask for that. Right. So yeah. Do you know if Dubsado is moving towards AI? Have they made any kind of statements?
I have not seen anything in regards to AI. They just recently launched their app. That was a long time coming.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm curious to see with the app if that's going to encourage even more trends towards AI, but I haven't heard anything from them.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're in that kind of gray zone still.
We are, and for designers, AI is kind of a scary word because they think that their jobs are going to be taken over. um, but I think that the right clients find the right designers, and AI doesn't have to be something that's scary. I think that it can be utilized in a really useful way when we're talking about back end kinds of systems and such.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
That's really all the questions I have, but
Yeah,
um
you had asked
do you,
me about where Hannah Bowyer and Company is going.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
please, yeah.
Um, we have just added procurement to our list of services, so that's something that we're excited about. We haven't been that deep in with our clients yet, and that's something that we've been asked for a very long time. So we're working on that, trying to figure out how to also just meet every designer where they're at when it comes to Dubsado. And we have different templates that we do for like brand new designers. So if they just wanted like the best and most used form of onboarding process, like we have that for them to be able to utilize. Uh, and then all the way up to the full custom Dubsado. But like we discussed today, there's a lot of designers that come to us and don't have all those process bits. And so trying to meet them where they're at is something that we're always trying to continue to grow in. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just for me, it's just getting in front of more designers and being in more spaces. And I love going to different groups and meets with designers, podcasts, High Point. Like I
Mhm.
love just mingling. So that's kind of what's up for us.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
um I'd like to hopefully come back in 6 months or 3 months and talk with you again, because I think things are going to be different for all of our businesses, all of our service businesses, and I'd like to get your point of view on all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to see where we are in 6 months. That'd be cool.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks very much, Anna. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it too.
That wraps up my conversation with Hannah Bowyer about the critical difference between beautiful design work and the business systems needed to deliver a client experience that matches. During our chat, Hannah made it very clear that getting processes out of your head and into documented systems not only creates more professional client experiences, but also gives you back your personal time and reduces business stress. If you found this episode valuable, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Leave a rating and review to help other interior designers discover these conversations. And share this episode with a designer colleague who's trying to juggle all their business details in their head. Thanks for spending time with Hannah and I today. Your support allows us to continue bringing you real-world business strategies for interior designers.